direction at the moment. Okay, call to order is already in place. Roll call, everybody is here, except of course Rich, who is out on sick leave. And are there any announcements that need to be made?
I have to leave at 1.
Okay, very good. Everybody else has, the intent of this meeting is to be over by 1.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Let's see.
Agenda?
Agenda, I asked for announcements first, sorry. Adoption of agenda, any changes? I would just simply say that item 6B is actually 2 separate policies. It started out as 1, but it's become 2 for clarity. And we'll get to that. Everybody should have a handout on that. Staff goofed, and that didn't get into the packet.
Our fault.
And, okay, so that's 2 items, and anything else? Okay, so let's try and keep this very short. There are no property owners here.
Adopted as,
Yes, adopted by acclamation, and there are no property owners here, kind of surprising, I thought there would be, and so now we go into...
And there were no announcements.
And there were no announcements.
Okay. I'm taking notes as best I can.
That's for your notes, I'm thinking of the audio tape, you know.
That
We already said
that too. Okay, keep moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I know, I'm talking fast because we want to get out of here by 1. Right, continuing business and voting is necessary. Item A, this is the update to SURF project funding. Staff.
Madam Treasurer, do you want to do it or do you want us to do it?
No, I'm gonna have you do it. That's great.
We're proposing to move forward. We have a motion on page 2, and I'd like to go through the motion.
Please go through it and then I will verify that that's the motion I made.
Yes, ma'am. General Manager, I'm moving the Board of Directors approve the following. A SURF allocation not to exceed 1772476. This includes contingency, taxes, permitting, design, bid, and construction of the following projects: marina fire standpipes, east and west gangways, marina soft shore armoring, demolition of barn 6, and purchase and installation of structure. It's a sprung type structure. There's a company called Sprung, but we're doing a sprung type structure. Construction to replace 2 pool liners and decks, and are ADA compliant, and a project manager to oversee for oversight and execution of projects 1 through 4. Each project to be tracked independently. However, the total budget is not to exceed 1772476, which is up which is up to 1,125,000 funded from the certain.
No,
$1,125,000 funded from the SURF construction loan and the balance from existing SURF reserves. General Manager and Accounting Manager obtained the best value construction loan funding for signature by the Board President and Treasurer for the $1,125,000 plus closing fee at an interest rate not to exceed 5.5% on a fixed rate loan with a minimum 1-year construction period, 1-year loan to be paid out of the current surface for the sole purpose of funding the project listed above in this motion. And then additionally, the Treasurer's motion is to be rescinded and replaced by this. And so, do you want me to go through each one of these?
Okay, first of all, under the 3rd bullet, I thought we agreed it was going to be an 18-month loan, construction loan.
It said with a minimum of 10, and the loan terms we have right now are an 18-month drawdown, and so a minimum of 10, and we were able to get it an 18-month drawdown.
And we don't want to put that in the motion?
Okay. Let me restate for you. What the motion says now is with a minimum 1-year construction period. So
And a
that's a
10-year
minimum
period.
12 months and 10-year, which works out to a minimum of 11 and possibly longer.
I just left the motion as it had been originally worded in regards to the loan.
We have obtained an 18, our papers are for an 18-month construction window. That is correct.
Then we should change
Forward right now.
or amend
We are, but, you know, in the next 4 days, if it goes this or that.
I got it.
Right now, it's a 4.25 bottom basement loan.
So what is the impact if we are held to a one-year construction loan?
The terms and well, I don't know, we would get our project done, but we could say that it's 18 month, that's what the loan covenants are.
If that's what the board would like.
Yes.
We just took what you said originally, minimum 10 months, or, I'm sorry, minimum 1 year, and because Mike suggested, and rightfully so, it should be longer, or was it Colin?
Colin, okay.
Colin.
Yes, Colin.
So I'd be more comfortable if we said a minimum 16 months.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do then. I'd like to move that the board of directors approve the process as is listed here, but with a minimum 16-month construction period and a 10-year term loan.
Minimum 16 months.
So it's a 10-year loan after drawdown. So if we go to 18 months, it's still a 10-year loan.
11, it's gonna be 11 years and
Mr. President, I guess the only reason that I'm concerned that we put this in there, and Jennifer, probably none of us care, but it has to do with how much we're gonna have in SURF every year. If we're paying only interest for 18 months as opposed, or even 16 months, as opposed to 10 years, you're gonna have less coming out in those additional years because you're only gonna be paying the interest on the drawdown, correct?
The reason I left it at a minimum 1 year construction period is because if for whatever reason, the work is done early, if it's done at 13 months, if it's done at 12 months, if it's done any time between 12 and 18 months, at that point, we actually stop having a construction loan and we start having a term loan. The loan terms at the end of our construction.
It's 10 years no matter what.
But, well, I mean, it is 10 years no matter
as soon
what.
as you sign into the loan.
So I didn't want to have to come back to the board and have that changed in the future if we finish our construction ahead of schedule.
That makes sense.
Just my commenting is, I'm far more comfortable with minimums and not to exceeds than I am with specifics that will require revision later as specifics change.
Okay, one question, then why, we hear 1 month, 12 months, 16 months, and 18 months. Why did we decide on 16 months?
That's the original timeline that was provided to the board in the cash flow, 16 months. To get all the work done.
And the contractors that,
We can meet that goal, but it's like zero room for any kind of schedule issue. I'd rather go with 18.
yeah,
Well, like I said, I personally would rather go with minimum 10, which allows any maximum that we need. You're talking about maximum term. It's like if we need 18, a minimum of 10 will certainly allow 18.
A minimum of 1 year.
Yeah,
That'll
I'm sorry,
allow
a minimum
18.
of 12 months will certainly allow 18 months, or 16, or 20 if you need it.
The bank is not going to let us go past 18.
I'm just saying, it allows us the freedom that we need within whatever loan document we
Yeah, I
sign.
mean, so as soon as all the work is finished and we're done drawing down on the loan, then it's no longer a construction loan. We start paying interest and principal.
So I personally am happy with the way it is worded right here because it gives us the greatest amount of flexibility.
Mr.
Sarah-
President.
Sarah, and then,
well, I didn't write names down, but point of order, the motion did not get a second.
Correct.
and so, and that's sort of why we're kind of going around the table talking about what actually the motion would be, rather than amending it. And that's a change to Robert's rules.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we might as well just have one motion.
okay. Then
If all we're talking about is this is a real technical item. And if we start talking about other stuff, then I'll want a motion. I agree with you.
Okay, I saw David and Sarah's hands.
Yeah, I just like, Larry, how you stated it, not to exceed. I mean, the minimum plus the not to exceed. It seemed like that gave us that flexibility, but it was clear. Whatever that language was that you mentioned, I thought was excellent.
Right here.
Well,
It's what is here, minimum 1 year construction period and.
Not to
2 years,
exceed.
And not to exceed 5.5%. That's what it's
oh,
already.
but I was thinking in terms of time frame, because you had mentioned not to exceed 18 months.
Oh, no, that, I
Oh, I'm
only
sorry.
meant not to exceed applying to the interest rate.
Okay.
So it can be lower. Let's hope.
Right.
Sure.
I was in common, I think it should read a minimum 1 year construction period with a maximum 18-month construction period, so that we say, we're very clear that it could, that still gives us the flexibility we need, but it's very clear to the public that it could be up to 18 months, so they're not like, hey, it's been a year, what's going on? It just, I think it would be most clear.
Good point. Good point.
We're comfortable with that.
Okay, so how would that look with a minimum 1 year construction period?
Not to exceed 18 months.
Not to, okay, and then, so it would say after that, not to exceed 18 months.
Right, right. Like that.
And not
Second.
to exceed 5.5%.
No, ma'am, that's already there. You don't need.
No, I mean, that's what's next. You just put,
No, ma'am, that's already there.
all right, I'm saying that's, you put and, comma, and, then not to exceed 5.
I'm sorry, ma'am, that's already there. Read above.
Could I just make a statement?
You want to reorder the whole thing?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
It's an interest rate not to exceed, wait a minute, I'm sorry, a minimum of I'm sorry. I apologize. I put it in the wrong spot. I put it in the wrong spot. My apologies.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so can now,
Linda,
can we,
Linda.
Linda, can we wait for a motion?
That's what I was gonna say. I think my other questions I have, I'm gonna have to wait for a motion, but just keep me on the list, Mike.
So we have made one change to this, which is annexation, and now, you're gonna make a motion.
And I will.
Yes, I have to make sure I have this in right. Okay. So, I move that the board of directors approve the following, and I'll just, it's all these bullets, and under the third bullet, it says, the general managing manager and accounting manager obtain the best value CERT construction loan funding for signature by the board president and board treasurer for 1.125 million plus closing fees at an interest rate not to exceed 5.5% on a fixed rate loan with a minimum 1 year construction period not to exceed 18 months and a 10-year term loan to be paid out of current CERT assessments for the purpose of funding the projects listed above in this motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Narsko seconded. Okay. Questions, Linda? I think you were first, and then Gail.
So in our initial iteration of this, we had numbers associated with all these projects. Currently now, it just says I'm gonna spend 1.772476 for all these projects. And I had asked about capital memos at the time, and they said, you know, and Jennifer said, hey, we got it all spelled out in these different, projects. We don't have that anymore. And yes, we've got a spreadsheet that says that all on there, and it says that they'll be tracked separately. However, this loan isn't going to pay for any of these projects in their totality.
Let me point out just a piece of information. As worded, the motion is only the bullet point that starts with the general.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were now going to the whole motion,
No,
so I'll
no,
wait,
ma'am.
I'll wait.
That's
Just put
the
me on
only
hold.
thing that's been moved, so right now.
Okay, just put me
that
on
bullet-
hold then.
That bullet point has not been moved, and if it's not moved, then these other things are simply modified as opposed to being repealed.
Then where do I put that in that I have an issue that we no longer have numbers associated, even though we have hard numbers for each one of the projects?
Actually, we do still have numbers because those original motions from the past are not being rescinded and replaced.
Yes, it says that. Additionally,
No,
the
no,
following.
No, ma'am, that's my
President
point.
motion.
That's my point. That-
I gotta wait till we get down here. Gotcha.
We haven't gotten there. No
I'm-
one has said that yet.
Peachy, okay, I'll wait.
You're
Okay.
right, we won't make 1 o'clock.
And I'm hoping that no one will make that motion, and then therefore your point is not necessary.
Okay, Mr. President Gale.
Yeah.
Okay, it says the treasurer's motion to the board number one. So we are now going through the motion and we've broken it out into 1, 2, 3, 4 possible subsidiary motions?
Point of order.
She's asking a question of what we are going to do.
Yeah, I thought we were dealing with the entire treasurer's motion, so I don't.
Listen, this, I can tell you from reading this document, that was the way it was put in, but I can only tell you what was moved. And the only thing actually moved was this bullet point right there.
Point of order.
Point of order, go ahead.
Point of information, if you want. We're asking to rescind all the other ones.
We're
Okay.
asking this be approved.
That's what staff has asked for.
That's
Okay?
correct.
I can only tell
And I
you the
intend-
motion that was made and seconded only said what you said. If you
Okay.
intended something
Mhm,
other,
mhm.
it wasn't said.
We'll get there.
So if you need to make an amendment to your motion and want to, then it's appropriate to do so.
You put me on the list?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, since I wasn't quite finished, if we're only looking at the paragraph under consideration, I just wonder if staff could give us a quick estimate of the amount of the closing fees, either as a percent or a dollar amount.
$3,000 plus
$3,000.
$6,000 plus legal fees.
And the legal fees are the bank's fees or our fees?
our fees.
And the bank's fees.
And you don't have an estimate of what those would look like?
No, I don't.
Is it ballpark question, ballpark, thousands or hundreds?
Probably I'd say 1,000, maybe 2.
And are these folded into the loan, or these are just a separate part?
Except for part of the loan.
They're folded into the loan.
In other words,
Paying for them upfront.
so they're not in the work.
Mr. President Carroll.
Carol?
My intent, just so that I can, all I was doing was making the change in that one bullet, but other than that, I expected that the entire motion would be as written. That was my intended motion, so if I withdraw my original
Please make a motion
motion.
to amend
Yes.
to
All right,
include.
to
the other
amend,
bullet.
I would include every bullet point that is in here. The only change was to the additional information in the third bullet.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any need to discuss? Okay, that amendment is approved by acclamation. So now we're talking about all of those bullet points at the time.
This includes the entire document, that with remarks on application. Correct, okay.
Okay.
Mr. President, we have Eric, Linda, back to Gail, David, no, Sarah?
Okay, so in the order that you said, again, remind me?
Eric, Linda, and Gail.
Eric.
Withheld, I was going to speak to the original motion, so.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Linda.
Once again, I'm gonna go to the fact that in the new motion, we have combined two of the projects that we are now, as part of this original motion, are rescinding any and all references to how much they are, that sort of thing. In our 2 through, I think it was 7 of these, we've combined the marina standpipes, east and west, and the gangways, and, you know, the rest of it is basically the same. But we have no numbers, where before, we went to the trouble of specifically calling these things out by an estimate from Wilson. We now have hard numbers, and I don't know why the hard numbers should not be included in each one of these items in the motion above. That, or we make darn sure we do capital memos for each of these. Because as I pointed out, the 1.125 isn't going to pay for any of these projects in full, and you're going to be drawing from SURF funds to complete them all.
Okay?
I would assume.
What I would suggest is the following amendment be made, that it's a satisfactory
The
view.
amendment I would make, if I have, can you call it next?
If, I don't think it'll be necessary. I think I'm trying to get us through this quickly. Okay, so at the bullet point where it says additionally, rescind, replace, do I have this motion, comma, but will be tracked as stated below.
Can't. All these numbers have changed.
Excuse me, may I speak? Staff input?
Staff input.
Great, so, the bank is requesting that we have one motion, one thing for everything. So the reason everything was presented individually at first was so that way we could come to the board and have each item discussed and have the board weigh in individually. And we're here today on a Sunday just to get the bank what it needs so we can meet with them on Monday. All of these items will be tracked individually. The reason that the standpipes and the gangways have been combined is that they were bid together. So it is most cost efficient for the contractor to bid those two items together and to come in and do that project as one project. So that's why it's now listed as one project, where originally we discussed it as two. We did not realize the amount of the cost efficiencies to have one contractor bid that as a package. So all of the I'm sorry I printed this direction. It was supposed to print the other direction. It's very hard to read. But all of these projects will be tracked individually to the budgets that are provided. Our last project, which is also going to be done last, is the Marina Soft Shore Armoring. That project has the highest risk. So the standpipes, the gangways, the barn 6 and the sprung structure and the pool, those are more or less lump sum contracts.
No, it's a fixed price.
Right, lump sum fixed price.
That's correct.
Yeah, it says LS on the bid proposal standing for lump sum. And so there's not as much risk there for those projects. There are fewer materials that are paid by the unit. Whereas the Marina Soft Shore Armoring, it has some fixed pricing, but it also has a lot of materials that go into that. We don't know what we're going to pull out of the water. So the other benefit of having this all as one motion is that if there are additional contingencies that are not spent previously in the project, we'll be able to apply those contingencies to the riskiest portion of the project. I mean, honestly, who knows what they're going to pull out of that water? We don't know. The second reason. Should the board like to put some additional numbers in here, my suggestion would be that after each 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we put estimated at subtotal, the dollar amount, and that dollar amount would be off of sheet here under contractor bids.
Okay, here's my suggestion for getting this moved through.
I'm trying to make a motion here.
Okay, make a motion.
I gave it some thought before coming here. I'll move to amend that we include, this will be the language, to include for each of the projects 1 through 4, the project costs presented as contractor bids 10.25.2017 for each project, pages 4 through 6 of the 10.29.2017 board handout. So I think that captures what Jennifer has recommended and also addresses Linda's concern.
I think that was wordier than my version, but it worked. Now,
Well,
where would you put that? Because it's an amendment. A parenthetical at the end of the top bullet or at the bottom of the top bullet?
let me just see.
I hear you. I want to know what she wants.
Well, would it not go after the second line of the first bullet?
That's kind of where I would expect it to
Yeah,
go.
that's where I would think it would go.
Okay, so that is a
For the-
motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and Linda clearly had her hand up first.
No, it's okay.
You know what? I think I would go to the second person because she,
You just skipped her because she was rude.
I'm just trying to move along. No,
May I have your copy, please?
we'd like to hear it one more time.
Right, Gene.
So
Did you read it again?
the secretary will read it before we, certainly before we vote.
Motion to amend to include for each of the projects numbers 1 through 4, the project costs presented as contractor bids 10-25-17 for each project on pages 4 to 6 of the 10-29-17 board handout.
So the only question I ask, Gail, when you say project bids, it's like the total project cost, the cost that we're providing, just not the project bids, because in here are permits, design, and construction management. So there's the project, the contractor bid, and then there's the other costs, so.
Plus taxes.
Plus taxes. So if we're saying the dollar amount, not including contingency, that works.
Not
That does
including
work.
contingency, we have contingency in those bids.
What we're doing is we're putting the contingency on top of the entire project.
I believe what Mitch is trying to say is that the motion should reference the total project cost.
I think it does.
It says the contractor's cost, which is not total project.
No, actually, well,
I chose that number.
all I can say is, it says the project costs presented as, quote, contractor bids, da-da-da-da-da. And that would be the orange column on your
The
spreadsheet.
revision.
Not the, no, sorry, not the bright orange, the kind
Okay.
of paler orange.
As long as it's clear that it's the total project cost.
That
Yeah.
includes the contingency.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then
Correct.
what I would suggest, and I think we can do this by acclamation, is where the motion reads the project costs presented as, it should say the total project costs. And actually put those in capitals, because that's the way the spreadsheet has them, total project costs. Is that satisfactory?
We want one other minor change here.
Well, wait a minute, let's do it one at a time. Is that satisfactory? So we can do that by acclamation?
Okay.
But I guess we can.
Wait a minute, hold it. She's jumping in on third place, so Eric is way ahead of us.
Yeah. Oh, okay, all right, you're right, you're right.
That's what it says here.
Eric?
With John, we're already talking about it.
Okay. Sarah?
I think it should say total estimated cost, because that's specifically what the spreadsheet says. The bold at the bottom where it says total estimated cost, if we're gonna reference it against this handout, I think it should be word for word what the handout says, so it's as least confusing as possible.
When we
So
let,
that
let's,
has input. It would be perhaps easiest just to, after each number 1 through 5, to say estimated subtotal and then the dollar amount from that sheet. So it's all in the motion, you don't have to refer to any attachments to go find it.
I don't understand the reasoning behind that from the people that are requesting that.
Would you like clarification?
I would like clarification.
He was asking, and you were.
I'm just asking for permission to respond.
Yep.
Because number one, this is money that's gonna be spent out of SERF. If I had my way, I would do capital requests. We've been doing them for years and years
All right,
and
now
years.
don't tell me what you did before.
But-
Now.
The whole point is that way you're saying where the money's going. Right now, it just says I'm gonna have projects of 1.772 million, and part of that's gonna be for this loan, and that's what the bank wants, but it's not gonna pay for it all. And it's because all of these are coming out of SERF, they should be requested, because there will be money, probably SERF money spent on each one of these projects. I don't know how that's gonna be planned out, but that's why, if this were being paid for in completion, in total, by this loan, I don't think I'd care so much, but it's not.
Does that answer your question?
I hope, okay.
Okay. Is there any further information you can give to that question?
I don't think so, it's just, we're gonna be spending money and we should know what each one of these are. You know, what's gonna happen if the pools, which are really the ones that are coming in higher, come in even higher yet? that means you're going to have to be using more SURF money that right now isn't allocated anywhere or doesn't say how much, wherever, whoever, however, but it'll be coming out of our SURF money, not the loan. The loan's limited.
The pools are a fixed price bid.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just saying, just because it's fixed price, hopefully it wouldn't happen. Could it happen? Yeah.
Yes, but,
Wait,
If
is
I
she
may-
have one on
no,
the-
she's, well, because I'm asking for clarification.
If I may attempt to put words in people's mouths. It
With your
seems,
permission.
I would have to guess that what we're doing now is for, member edification.
Community.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Is that right? Thank
That's
you.
part of it, and I think it's also for our accounting. I know Jennifer does a good job, but I know that some of our stuff that we get, we end up with change orders and stuff on, and I just would like that clarity.
I would
Of
not
where
have
we're
presented
starting.
a motion that would not have,
And I agree with
been
you.
good for my accounting records.
So,
Thank you.
from your perspective, this motion is sufficient without this addition.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And we have been assured several times that all of these things, at several board meetings, that all of these things will be separately tracked. Anyway, all right, who we got next?
All right, I
We
apologize.
have a motion to amend on the floor right now.
That we get right, so we're all talking about the motion to amend.
I apologize to Carol because I thought when she was upstairs, she was done.
Okay, so the thing that I wanna ask is, if we're putting numbers to this, part of the numbers that are included in this is the 10% contingency, which you say is a very low risk. If in fact you wanted to reserve, if, let's say it was only used 5% contingency and you had 5% left over, if I heard you correctly, you were hoping that if there was additional funds, you could actually apply it to the soft armoring component at the end if need be. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are requesting that the contingency, which I think it does say in our motion, that this is going to be tracked. Each project will be tracked as a separate project, right? But we want to be able to put the contingency to the entire project. It's one loan, it's one project. The low-risk projects, which are 10% upfront, they have contingency. If we don't have to use that contingency, great, it remains a contingency reserve. If we run into a problem at the back end, at the highest risk, it's not uncommon that 100% of your risk arrives at 95% of the way into your job. We should have 100% of the contingency ready to solve that risk.
Well, the question I guess I have then is, if we are putting the estimated costs, which include the 10% contingency in the first 3 of these projects,
That's why I asked.
does that limit our ability to use that contingency
For that purpose.
later on? That's the question I have.
Oh, I believe that the motion simply says that, you want it simply is stating what budget you're using to track each one independently. However, since the second bullet point is not being amended, the total budget for all of the projects above, will be tracked as one amount. So if we go over here, under there, that's okay, as long as the total amount for all 5 of the projects is within budget.
My only concern was, Linda was talking about change orders. I don't want to deal with change orders.
Neither do we. That's why we'd like to have the contingency applied to the entire project. I'd like to point out something, just to give everyone how close we are here. We started this off with conceptual plans, and we delivered fixed price bids for within 0.4% of conceptual estimates. That is unheard of. That is unheard of. If it was within 10%, everyone would say, okay, that makes sense, 0.4%. So I think we have a fairly good grasp on what we're dealing with here.
Mr. President, Gail, and then Mr. President, and then Sarah.
Thank you. I hope that people will vote for this amendment, and the reason is, as I compared this to the one that was passed on the 7th and then very slightly amended on the 14th, there are some other omissions. A key one to me is, this new one doesn't say as reviewed and recommended by the Finance Committee. Number 2, we're meeting on a Sunday, a glorious, fantastic day, where everyone wants to go off and watch the Seahawks or something, so there's gonna be pressure to leave. And this is a big deal. We're talking about almost $2 million. We're very late in our term. I mean, I'm assuming this is our last meeting, but given Senor Presidente, anything could happen. So I just think we should try and check the boxes and show that we've shown due diligence. We're making this motion pretty much comport with the original by just, there's a little bit more flexibility here. The numbers have changed per project based on the bids that have been received. So that's my desire. As someone who will be rotating off this board, I want to make sure that I've done my fiduciary duty to, to check the boxes, dot the i's, cross the t's. I don't think it's going to hurt us because, as the president often points out, a new board can make other motions. The general manager can bring other motions to the board.
Mr. President, you're up.
Okay, in that line, we have discussed this a bazillion times over many, many weeks. And I don't think there's anything left really to discuss. We're arguing about the minutia of accounting at the moment, and sending out, how should I put it, public notice that we are aware of specific costs. I would prefer, rather than this motion, I would prefer something along the lines of clarifying the next bullet point to talk about the contingency fund being applied to the project as a whole.
I prefer the first motion on the table.
The motion on the table.
The original amendment.
The motion, the amendment on the table,
The motion to amend, this one.
right.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah, right.
I had under my fingertips, is the motion to amend. Well, the motion to amend, again, it has that implication that was raised that contingency funds might not be transferable within the overall project.
No, it doesn't, because the second bullet point says each project will be tracked independently. However, the total budget is not to exceed $1,772,476.
And your interpretation of that language is that that is enough to clarify that the contingency fee is for the whole project as a whole, as opposed to each individual can be used for any of the sub-projects. Is that clear enough for you in that language?
I think he's proposing a stronger statement, which I think is better.
Okay.
I'm proposing that we don't need this because it gets into too much detail. All these projects are numbered. They're numbered right here, 1 through 4. And I want to be clear, the project management is a separate cost that's not covered in this, okay? So it's items 1 through 4, they're numbered. And I would just say, make sure that we add this and then talk in the next bullet that the contingency as estimated for each separate project is actually to be totaled and applied to the whole.
Okay, so you're amending.
I'm speaking against this motion.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Mr. President,
Sarah.
Okay, two things. One, I think the current motion does exactly what Jennifer is proposing to not do, because we're putting in after each one of these an exact amount, and that amount includes a contingency. I think that's appropriate, because I think if it does happen where, hey, we didn't use contingency on these 3 things, and this one that we knew was higher risk we need to pull from, I don't see any reason why they can't come back to the board and say that exact thing. We didn't use contingency on these 3 projects, this was our higher risk one, we want to pull the contingency from that and use it on this piece of the project. Yes, they would have to come back to us, but I think that I don't see any problem or issue with that, and it would keep us more informed of what's going on as these different projects develop, since there are so many different moving pieces. So I think having those amounts in there, including the contingency, we're still not stuck. I mean, we can still come back to the board and say, we need to move this contingency to this other project. The other thing that we're within 0.4% in response to Mitch's comment of the original amount that, we had in the conceptuals, but we also had a much higher contingency, 20% or higher from what I remember. So we dropped that down to 10%, so
On what?
we gave ourselves some wiggle room at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely we did.
Yeah.
We put a lot of contingency in there for some things that we did not anticipate, and that's why we went for fixed price bids. Now, mind you, even on the spit work, the work is fixed price. The amounts that they're gonna pull are allowances, but the work is fixed price. So we retired more risk on that, which is why we were able to drop that down from 30% to 20.
Mr. President Leslie?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the, what are listed as contractor bids, as Gail has listed. Well, contractor bids, the title at the top. Now, what I'm looking at is what we are really getting to down at the bottom, which says total estimated costs. And, for clarification, I would rather see for items 1 through 4, the total estimated costs, including contingency.
It's already in there.
Estimated, that's what I'm saying. The total estimated cost, which includes contingency. So that people will see what these separate things are, but they will understand that these are estimated. They're not the real thing. And so, you're not looking at somebody saying, you didn't hold that to exactly this dollar amount. No, this was estimated. And with a comment about the total project costs, that there's, I don't know where to get, but this is just, I'm getting down into the minutia of this. We're trying to put 4 projects together with a total pool of money, and as of today, we have these estimates, but that's not, they're not hardwired. So, we can say, we can spend up to this amount of money, and the contingency can be moved around. It's just, there's just too much detail at this point.
Just a question, or point of information. On the spreadsheet, there is one box on the first page, 4, that doesn't have the phrase total project or total estimated costs in it. That's in the right-hand column in the middle.
The marinas, fire, standpipes, east and west gangways, that's number 1. That'll be tracked together. So I showed you them separately because that's how they were originally approved.
Okay, so
But
this,
they're together.
and this total estimated in the bottom box actually includes the stuff at the top.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that's combined.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Mr. President?
Yep.
David?
And just gonna comment on this about the cumulative contingencies, that we don't have to stop every one of those. So whatever that particular wording was, I think you had mentioned if that's the.
So are you commenting for or against
For that.
for or against this?
Could you read that again, please?
Okay, this is what's on the table for discussion, for motion to amend, to include for each of the projects number 1 through number 4, the project costs presented as, quote, contractor bids 10/25/2017, unquote, for each project. There's an extra period that shouldn't be there, and then paren, pages 4 through 6 of the 10/29/2017 board handout, paren closed period.
Which didn't have the accumulated.
Yeah, I just want the wording that deals with what you said.
That's what's on the floor.
Does that include what,
That does not, and there is still some discussion about that.
Mr. President, I speak out against the amendment. I think that the amendment is causing more kerfuffle than was originally designed. I think the fact that we have in here our fiduciary, putting our fiduciary, what was the wording? Our fiduciary
Duty,
responsibility in here to the community. If they don't think we have fiduciary responsibility now, then putting those numbers in there is not gonna change that whatsoever. I think that the way that it was amended originally to the, not starting with 1 year, going to 18 months, 10 years, I think that was fine, and I think we should stop it right there. And we should vote on that amendment and throw these other two amended amendments out the window.
I have a,
Now we have Gale
and I have a question for clarification. In the original motion, which is, as I read it, just this one sheet, does that actually, yeah, 2 pages, 1 sheet of paper, does that actually include the spreadsheet or not include the spreadsheet?
It's a 2-pager, it's just 2 pages.
Okay, so it does
So
not
it does
include
not
that
include it.
spreadsheet. Okay, then add my name down.
May I go through the motion as it stands now?
Well, the only thing that we're talking about right now is the motion to amend.
Okay, but so that everybody understands where we are. Because we've got 2 motions to amend on the floor right now.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Actually, we only have
Yes,
one.
we do.
What?
First one passed.
That's why I wanted to read this to you.
Oh,
Because number 1 motion by Carol and David, second by David, was to adopt the bullet point number 3, okay? And the first motion to amend is to expand that to include the entire
I
document.
thought we had voted to approve.
No.
No, there was no vote.
No.
We have not voted on
They-
it.
There was no second?
Well,
There was a second, but there was no vote.
There was no vote. Okay, then, that point of order is absolutely appropriate,
Okay.
and we need to first deal with that
Okay.
and not talk about anything else. So, can we just say by acclamation that that motion to include all these bullet points is approved?
As amended.
And,
Okay.
as has been amended.
Okay,
The
but that-
the
and-
amendment was done.
And that's
done.
not what I have, okay? I have that the motion to amend includes the entire 2-page document,
Yes.
not just.
Okay, well, to me, the last bullet goes from one page to the
Okay,
next.
all right.
Because it's a listing of all of those things.
So now that we've agreed on the amendment.
Okay, so that is over with. Okay, now, the motion. What we- what-
Have we decided by acclamation
That's fine.
to accept that?
Yeah.
Okay,
that-
all right.
That's,
I'll
yeah,
draw a line
that's-
then.
okay.
Okay.
And pardon me, I
Okay,
usually keep better track.
Mr. President, I'm not sure if these 3 names that are still out there have to do with the amendment that we are discussing in regards from Gail. But the names are Gail, Carol, and now you.
Okay, well, I would accept a friendly amendment to what I put forward, using Leslie's language and language I heard from Jennifer, replacing the contractor language there with total estimated cost. And I'm not sure how Robert's works, but I'm sure Larry will guide us through it.
Your willingness to accept is not a motion to amend. So that's your comment.
It's a friendly amendment. Do they have to be voted on?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, there is no such thing as a friendly amendment once the amendment has actually been, once the motion's been put on the floor. Who's next?
Mr. President, Carol.
I think that I like Gail's concept. I think it's too wordy and you have documents that have to be attached. I think instead, if you're going to add those numbers, that you just after one say marina fire standpipes and east and west gangways dash estimated cost X. Then the next one, marina soft arm. In other words, you put those numbers in here and just make it be done. Don't add pieces of paper that are somewhere else, and just put the number in that comes off of our estimated costs. So there's no question.
Mr. President, you're up.
Okay, unfortunately, I disagree with that point. I think that this motion to amend is far too wordy. I would prefer something, the following projects, adding note pages 4 through 6 of the 1229 board handout, closed. Making a reference to that extra document. The document exists, it's no more work, all you got to do, put it together. That's number one, and then number two, the next following bullet point should say something about how that the contingency is for the total of all of these projects.
Mr. President, if I may, and second bullet does say that.
Doesn't say that about contingency.
It
again,
says the total budget, which means that they have the ability to take a contingency from any project that did not utilize it and utilize it elsewhere because it's within the total budget.
well, let me refer to staff, because there was a dispute. Jennifer thought what you thought. Mitch said something along my lines that maybe stronger language would be appropriate. I don't know
I
what you
think
guys
Mr. is
think.
trying to get out here by 12:30.
No. So what do you guys think about his comment?
I think we're okay with saying, oh, as pages 4 through 6, but, and the language does say that as long as it says it's a total project, that's what we're looking for. We want to be able to track it, but we want the contingency, enough firmness to say the contingency is against the entire project.
Okay, then I'll just close my comments with, I am speaking against the motion to amend, and I will make a slightly amended one, as I just described. Okay, who's next?
No one.
No one, all right.
Call the question.
Question ready to be called. Apparently, okay, all in favor of the motion to amend as originally proposed by Gail, please indicate. We have 1, 2, all opposed, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the motion fails. I will restate my proposal.
Are you making a motion to
I'm
amend?
making a motion to amend, to insert in front of the colon at the second line of the first bullet point, to insert thereafter, paren, note, pages 4-6 of the 10/29/2017 board hand-out, paren closed period.
Just to get it on the second. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Moved and seconded.
Did you move, Larry?
Yeah, I did. I don't normally, but since I had spoken, I felt I should say it completely. Okay.
Sarah.
Okay. Okay, I feel like if you're going to reference those, I agree, it makes it much simpler, it's not to worry, you just say, look at these documents, but you are then restricting the contingency, because there's a specific contingency amount in here for each one of these. There's nothing else that says, but you can move the contingency. Yes, there's a total project cost, but it doesn't say, we're gonna move these to whatever projects need them. The contingency's in here. If we had this formatted to where it had all the costs less contingency and then maybe a final number that said total contingency, sure, but the way this is set up, I would strongly disagree that it allows contingency to be moved to whatever project's needed.
How would you suggest we change that?
Probably pull the contingency out of each one of these and do a separate box that says total contingency.
Project, and staff says we can do that very quickly. That'd be easy for us to do. We could live with that.
And we don't have that in front of us?
No, but we could just draw a box saying at the bottom of those tables, this is the contingency amount for the total project.
Okay, so bottom of the page.
Or Sarah, if I might suggest, make the statement in Larry's comment, the contingency for each of the elements will be rolled up as a total project contingency.
That would be easier.
It would be much easier.
Much easier, yeah. So that would be a motion to amend, the motion to amend.
I'm just proposing, I'm
Right.
just proposing to you.
Is
So-
this added?
So that at the end of that parenthetical comment, the parenthetical comment, it would add board handout, comma, with contingencies total as one number.
Not exactly what you said.
The phrasing, sir, I believe, would be all project contingencies will be rolled into one amount to be applied against the total project.
With all project
Sarah,
contingencies
all
to,
project contingencies
to be rolled
into one cost,
To one amount.
into one amount and applied against the total project.
One amount applied.
As needed. You comfortable with that?
Applied as
needed.
To the entire project.
Against the
Applied
entire
to.
project, applied against the entire project as needed.
We'll still have to report on where did you use your contingency.
Okay. Against the entire project. Okay, so there's a subsidiary motion to amend to add to mine the following, comma, with all project contingencies to be rolled into one amount applied as needed against the entire project. Is there,
I would say.
I actually, nobody made it, but you want to make it?
No.
Okay, all right. David makes it, Eric seconds it.
And that deals with this rolling up, just as stated, all projects contingencies.
Yeah, this is what the way I wrote it down, slightly different from the way Jennifer read it. With all project contingencies to be rolled into one amount, applied as needed against the entire project. Period. Well, not a period, closed.
Parentheses.
That would be my motion.
Okay, so that motion has been made and seconded. Now, do we have further discussion?
Call a question?
Question called. All in favor of that motion to amend the motion to amend, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 1, 2. Oh, I'm sorry, 2.
I'm trying to do what you guys want to do. I don't agree with it, but I'm trying to do
Thank you, Sarah.
Come on! It does, but I misunderstood. I thought you were voting.
No, she didn't.
She
She
did
was
not.
trying to help David with the wording of what we were trying to do.
So the two against were
Sarah and
Mike
Mike.
and Sarah.
Yeah, great.
Okay, well, then the motion to amend passes. So now the motion to amend says, motion to amend, that inserting after the, or just in front of the colon, paren, note, which I believe is not, it just says make a reference to. It doesn't say follow. Note, pages 4 through 6 of the 1029 board handout, comma, with all project contingencies to be rolled into one amount applied as needed against the entire project. Paren closed, period. Or paren closed, and then it's followed by the semicolon. Question's called, or the colon. Okay. The question is called. Is there any objection to calling the question? Okay. Without objection, then all in favor of the motion to amend, please indicate. I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? Sarah and Mike. That motion to amend does pass. Okay. Okay, now, back to the overall motion, which now has a little bit of extra wording and, what is that, 4 extra sheets of material. Any further comment on the entire motion? Yes, sir.
Question on the, my understanding of the entire motion. The 4th bullet point. So the motion, the actual motion seems to rescind everything that is beyond the 4th bullet point, and replace it with everything above the 4th bullet point.
Yes, it does.
Including the 4th bullet point. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that completely.
That is correct.
I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Comments? Okay. Can we call a question? Without objection, then, all in favor of the entire motion, please indicate. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? Sarah's opposed. This motion passes.
Sarah, before you leave, did you have any questions on the bid packages and the proposals, any of the numbers?
Nope.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So, as I'm finishing this up, does anyone have any questions on the bid proposals that were submitted? There were some variances on them, we can talk to them if you have any questions. If not, I'm not going to try to extend it. I'm prepared to talk about it if you want.
Okay.
Go.
One question on Tiger for the pools. They have a line item, the accessories. There's such a great difference. Well, there is on a lot there. But it's, you know, the Carmen bid 17,000 and Tiger only bid 2,400. I wonder, are they talking about the same pool accessories or?
They are, the specifications, Linda, come on by, I'll give you the spec sheet. I've got spec packages on every one of these. So they're already doing bid validations and verifications, and they have to put up a bid bond on it. So,
Okay, that's cool. It was such a, it's like a whoa, wow,
Yeah.
17 for one and 2 for another.
but you look at the overall price, and
Yeah.
one of the contractors is like, you know, way up there. So, there were some interesting anomalies on it. It turned out that one of the contractors was told that there was a huge, bond beam surrounding the pool. And they expected they were going to have to excavate the bond beam, and so they prepared their plan accordingly. The winning contractor has the pool contractor that put this one in and knows the bond beam's not there.
Gotcha, okay. There's just really a big difference.
Is that fair to the guy who thought?
Yes, it is. This is how work is done.
Very good. Okay.
That's all.
All right, so the only two things that we have in front of us now are the two policies. This was originally on the agenda for Thursday, and I hadn't had a chance to really think about it. Now I have had a chance to think about it. It presented itself as two separate items. One regarding requests for records by directors and committee chairs. The other one related to board member and committee chair involvement in association management. Okay, so due to the mess up in getting this thing published, I don't know what to say except these things happen. Right, so has anyone had any opportunity to look at these things?
I'm reading it now.
Move to accept them.
I did,
Second.
when you sent it out yesterday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Larry, motion.
Okay, so one motion has already been made to accept both, and that motion has been seconded. I think David moved both and Eric seconded.
Okay.
Okay? And,
Gail and Linda, sir.
Gail.
Okay, well, as you know, Larry, I think that they really concern me. And to take a page from Eric Trower's book, I think that the first one in particular violates the RCW, which states the board of directors shall not act to determine the qualifications and powers of the members of the board. By allowing one board member, the president, the ability to deny a request, it seems to me as an attempt to limit the powers of the board. I think this is really, I think first of all, we have very little time to look at the revision, but I think it's a very dangerous precedent. I don't know that there are that many requests coming from the board, generally speaking, and I see no reason why they can't be granted.
Okay. Who else?
Mr. President, Linda.
I don't see anywhere in the bylaws, there's, I'm okay with the board president, treasurer, chair, or a committee chair may request information directly from the general manager or designee. It says in the bylaws, any director, and that means anybody else that's not a chair of anything. And I understand that there needs to be a process where maybe we submit it to, there's no thing of how do we submit our request for information, do you just, we've been told you just can't email Mitch and ask him for something, and he should know that it's a special request, otherwise if he's got 80 million different emails, he's not gonna know that necessarily that it's a request for me or a request from Eric or something special. There's a thing about where you can deny it. There's nothing in the bylaws that say you as the president or whoever is president has any right to deny a director's request. It just says, that you have that authority to do that. And I think that, yes, there has to be a process so you don't have 9 million people going to staff, and yes, it should go through the general manager. As the president, I know that we have documents that say that as the president, you deal directly with the general manager, or the president does, I'm just, because you are the president now, that person can submit that to him and say, here's a request that I have, but not that anybody has the right to deny it. There's nothing in the bylaws, unless you want to change the bylaws. I think this is overreaching.
Mr. President, if I may, as a point of order, sometimes the discussion is going to be on one of the policies and not both of them, but the motion is that both policies are kind of put together as one, so it's going to make it difficult.
Would you like to make a motion to divide?
Well, I'm wondering if that is a good idea, the way that we're going about it.
Roberts specifically allows for a motion to divide a complex issue.
All right, then I make a motion that these two policies be divided so that we can talk about one or the other. Because I'm not sure that when Linda was speaking, I knew which side of the paper I should be referring to.
I second.
Second, okay, moved and second. Do we want to adopt by acclamation? Okay, by acclamation. So we'll talk about right now, and I think just based on Linda's comment and I think Gail's comment, the first one that we should be dealing with is the requests for directors, vice director, and committee chair. Those are the first two.
It's a governance issue, and Jennifer and I have something else to talk about. She needs to go. Can she and I step outside, and so we can talk, and I'll be standing out here if need be. If I will knock on the window. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jennifer, for giving up your Sunday afternoon. So sorry.
You guys have a great day. Thank you. It's important. Thank you.
Okay, who's next?
Okay, which one are we talking about first?
We're on the director and committee chair request for
Okay,
records.
so we're going to call that number one.
If you wish.
Thank you. All right, so then Leslie raised her hand, but I'm not sure what was
Yes,
over.
and since we were discussing that is what my comments are about.
Then Eric had his hand, and then Gail.
Okay, so looking at this, there is a process for requesting information, and there is a form to use. Just as any member has to fill out this form, I believe that a board member should have to fill out this form also and submit it to the office, just like any other member does. I'm comfortable with, just because you're a board member, you can grab a member of the staff and say, I want this. I think that a board member should be held to the same standards as any other member. And if the request is refused, just as with any other board member, you can bring it to the full board.
I have my name on the list.
Mr. President, Eric.
I agree with what Leslie was commenting with respect to this policy in no way serves to deny a board member access to information. It simply gives a process through which we would be expected to follow. And for example, if I need information right now, I have a person that is designated at staff to help with communications committee or board information, and I would simply ask for the information. However, to do that one project that we'd already been authorized to work on. Now, if I wanted to have something that was out of the ordinary, then I would expect to ask either our general manager or our president for access to that information. And if it was denied, then I would go to the full board and say, hey, I need this information. Here's why. and they would either support me or not in my endeavor to gain access to that information. If I was then denied, I would do it as a simple member. And this, so this policy in no way impinges on my rights or powers as a director. It simply gives us a process that is more, which is more than adequate for us to use whatever powers we have as board members to gain access to information that's necessary for us to do our jobs and fulfill our responsibilities as directors. So I support the policy as written.
Mr. President, Gail?
We would have to amend our bylaws, I think, to change this policy. Number one, the members' rights are separated. They have their own subsection, and then the directors have a different subsection, and it simply states, every director shall have the absolute right at any reasonable time to inspect all books, records, and etc., and to make copies at reasonable cost to the association. It does not limit it. I feel that this is cumbersome. I think it gives the board president, whoever is the president, the ability to delay and stall. And moreover, given that I saw this was sent out at 11:04 this morning and we had a noon meeting, how can our attorney possibly have looked at this? I mean, I think it's a violation of the RCW that I mentioned, that doesn't allow the board to curtail the powers of the board. And I think it's in violation of our bylaws. I think it's, and I also would add, I think politically, to use Larry's term, it is suicide. More political suicide by this board.
Mr. President, this is Larry.
Okay, I would offer an amendment to delete the second paragraph of the policy and to put a period after any consultant to SVCA and then delete the rest.
So where
are you?
I can follow you.
Okay, let's go to, okay.
The paragraph starting with other directors.
Look at the thing that says policy. There's a first paragraph and a second paragraph.
Yep.
Other directors. I'm suggesting to delete that paragraph.
In its entirety.
In its entirety.
Okay.
And then in the third paragraph, the sentence that starts directors and committee chairs shall not request directly from staff, attorney, or consultant to SVCA, and then put a period and delete the rest.
Period where?
After the SVCA,
So before without.
before the word without, and then delete everything else in that paragraph.
So starting with without, all the way to the end of general manager?
All the way to the end of general manager. And the reason for that motion that I am making is because we do, as pointed out, already have a process. We adopted it, I think, Thursday.
No, we didn't.
You tabled this.
Oh, the member
No,
process.
yeah, the member process, we already adopted, and that process applies to anybody. So, I don't think these are totally necessary, and I am concerned with that they appear overbroad in light of, certainly in light of the bylaws, and possibly also in light of RCWs.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to make those deletions.
So that's from the consultant to SVCA period.
That's correct.
And then removing that previous.
So that's all we're talking about at this point.
Mr. President,
Linda?
Can I make a friendly amendment, or do you want to vote on yours and then I'll, in the second paragraph, you still have in there, if the president.
No,
the entire paragraph.
The entire paragraph is
All right, I'm sorry, that's withdrawn.
Okay, any further discussion?
call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor of the motion to amend, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
It's too,
Okay.
it's a move in the right direction, but it doesn't go there.
So is that a con or?
It's
an
abstain.
That's an extension. Okay, so that motion to amend passing. So now we're back to the underlying motion.
Right.
Is there any further discussion on the underlying motion? Yes, sir.
Briefly, I'd like to say that this amendment should alleviate the concerns about the bylaws that Gail mentioned.
Absolutely.
I think it does a complete job of that meeting.
Mr. President, Gail.
Gail.
I am still concerned, let's see, paragraph, the second before the end, the general manager may determine the format. Because again, we have an absolute right to look and copy any record. So what is the format? I mean, it seems as if he could decide to decline or to reorder or whatever. I just think that that one should also be excluded.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make yes, I'll move that we take out that paragraph that begins, the general manager may determine the format.
That entire paragraph or just that sentence?
The entire paragraph.
Okay, so you're also directing that to responses being sent to all directly. Just to clarify.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay, all right. So motion to delete that paragraph has been made. Is there a second?
For discussion purposes, I'll second.
Okay. Discuss.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was Leslie first.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
and my comment on that is may determine the format. Okay, so I can only use an example of an incident that happened a year or so ago when a director requested some information having to do with employees and salaries and so on and so forth, and he was given this information. He didn't like the format. He insisted that the staff go back and move it around to the format that he wanted. To me, this is the formatting. The information was there, but the formatting was, you know, if he wanted that, he could have done it himself. I'm against this amendment.
Mr. President, Linda.
Linda.
I've got to say, a record is a record, you know? I might want to see if the GL could be given to me in spreadsheet and a workable thing, but records are things that have already been created.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think more than anything in all this discussion, even the online chatter that has gone on, is it's like the record has to be something that's already created. I have a friend who requires the GL every month, and to be nice, she asked for it for the whole year. Mitch very correctly, and so she submits every month when she knows that it's going to be coming up, says, I can't grant you permission for this record because it has not yet been created. And so I'm saying, to me, this process is really, and she does that faithfully, but I understand that it's like there are some things that aren't created ahead of time, and you know, the salaries of staff and stuff, there's probably a form where that's already a record, a regular record, and that should be able to be available. Should somebody be able to say, I know I want this differently? No, that's the record, that's what you get.
Mm-hmm.
Point of information, Director Chiarello, not every record in the association is available, as you said, to the directors. There are records in the association that are not available.
Well, that's not what the bylaws.
But that's what the law says, actually. You can't, for example, ask for certain personnel information. There are documents that are created that are not records of the association.
Well, you know, I don't know if I'm on the list, but let me just respond since you. I think if we, in denying a request, will cite the actual piece of legislation that means that even a director is denied it. And I understand under HIPAA, if someone is being counseled for drug abuse or something, that's probably privileged, and I can't, you know, there's an area under HIPAA which is absolutely not available, having to do with your medical status. Pretty much everything else is available.
We shall see.
And we shall see, absolutely.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Leslie.
As an example, I would be very unhappy if any of the staff were to give out my payment information for my dues. Or has anybody ever garnish my wages or anything like that, and then the community, I mean, there are things I can tell you that I don't want given out.
And
That
that's
has
the
nothing to do with
policy
staff.
section.
Yes, it is.
And that applies to members, but not to directors. This is the policy for the directors.
If any of you directors want to know what my payment situation is, no,
Leslie, we
that's
never asked. I mean,
Ma'am?
Okay.
Not appropriate to respond directly back to her without being recognized. And when you have a response, you're supposed to send it to the chair of the meeting.
Well, if you're as president and you interject continually.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Can't have more fun than this on Sunday. Mr. President, I think we should call the question on this.
For the amendment, yeah.
On the amendment, question has been called, is there any objection?
Now, what's the?
The amendment is to withdraw that full paragraph,
Number 4.
which is, the general manager may determine, and then the next sentence, responses shall be sent to all directors.
So I'm in favor.
Okay, so all in flavor, all in flavor, please indicate.
Was that just Gail?
Yeah.
Gail said, okay, all opposed, please indicate. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4,
Abstain.
and David abstains. So David abstains, and everybody else votes against. Gail is in favor, the motion fails. Okay, so we're back to the underlying.
So this whole paragraph remains as
Yes,
is?
it remains.
Okay.
Okay, so I see Gail's hand up.
I know, but I don't know what
We're talking about the underlying
Well,
motion.
now we're talking about the amendment that you made to remove paragraph 2 and to place a
We
period.
voted on
We
it.
did that one.
We voted and it passed.
Yeah, it passed 5 to
Oh,
1.
I want to stay.
Oh, you're right, never mind. Back in again.
Back
Right.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know, I know Gail's hand is up, but I don't.
Okay, so the original motion then was made by David and seconded by Eric, and then there was a motion to divide, and so I'm not sure which motion it is that
Right
we're
now,
actually.
we're
Working
talking,
on this one.
we're working on what Mike called number 1.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Then Gail is up.
So my question is, has Rich Davis reviewed this draft motion that you sent out at 11:04?
Not to my, well, I sent it out much prior to 11:04.
Well,
I
that's
sent a new copy because it
just,
didn't get
but it
included
didn't
in the
get
packet.
to anyone on the board.
And therefore, and to your specific question, no, he has not. To my knowledge. In fact, I don't even think he's back in town.
But he will, is that correct?
I absolutely.
We run all policies past.
Can we call the question on the entire document?
Mr. President, Eric's hand's up.
I'm asking to call a question, please.
Okay, all right, so question, there appears to be no objection to calling the question. All in favor of this policy, please indicate. I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and opposed is Gail. So this passes.
Mr. President, make a motion that we label the opposite side of that policy number 2, board member, committee chair, involvement, association management.
Okay. I have labeled the signed copy as number 1, and I will label the other copy as number 2. Okay, so this is a completely different issue. This is who has the right to talk to who and about what, and through what chains of command. It's already been moved and on the table, so it's open for discussion. I see Linda's hands up.
I guess what I don't understand, what I would like a little bit of clarity to, and I'm just reading it now, so I might be missing it. As Chair Benny Mitch a long time ago assigned Lisa that I could do things with her. There's times I will ask her to initiate bids to the printer. There's times, I recently asked her, hey, let's get a bid on food. It was really high for the SGM. Let's take a look between El Agave and Ken here and just let's get a better number. But I asked her to do these things. I asked her to look into mailing. I gave her permission for that stuff. If you have that permission from the general manager, can you then just deal with this person directly? That's my question.
Just to point out in the language. It says
Paragraph.
without prior, the first policy paragraph, last couple of lines, without prior approval of the board president or board as a whole. And that approval should be continual in the circumstances that you set forth. So, communications should be given, especially because communications is an annual committee anyway. Communication should be given an approval to speak with certain staff on certain purposes without interference.
That's fine.
Same thing for NME, same thing for whatever it might be.
Yeah.
EPC, finance.
Yeah, I mean, this basically says, give us notice. Don't just go do it.
I see. Yeah.
Once notice has happened and approval has been made, the notice would be, I request to have continuing access for the following reason. Then sure, duh.
I just want to
But
make sure.
not just jump up and me go over to Bruce saying, hey, Bruce, I noticed there's a crappy spot on my road. Could you guys run out and do some hot patch?
I understand what you're saying. Thank you. That was just a point of clarity, that's all.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I have a question. I don't want to make an amendment because if I get proper explanation, then I'm good. The last paragraph, the second part down, the director shall first bring such matter to the attention of the general manager, then the president. I'm just wondering why that's the chain of command in that regard.
Well, the best that I can explain is because that's the chain of command. That's the existing chain of command. If you have a problem with day-to-day operation, you go to the person in charge of day-to-day operation, which is the general manager.
I thought
if you don't get satisfaction, then you move it up to the executive, to his boss.
Right.
And if his boss doesn't give satisfaction, then you move it to the wider executive committee. And if they don't give satisfaction, then you take it to the whole board. Because that's the way the funnel works. It all funnels down to the GM and then out to staff from there. It's an hourglass shape.
But I thought that the relationship between the board and the general manager funneled through you first.
That's why the, well, okay. I think he's pointing out to, in prior days, there has always been some sort of a statement to the effect that you go to the president before you go to the GM. And this changes that.
I have a question.
Okay.
Just in the flexibility of the world, Linda is always working with the HR manager. Somehow, let's say something doesn't go right in that relationship. Where does Linda go? Do you? No, she already got permission to go work with this person. Come to me. What's the problem? Same thing, EPC is suddenly having a problem with the person they're supposed to talk to, and they're having a problem. Where do you bring it to? Bring it to me. I think this is, I had no input, nor have I, so this whole policy was a bit of a surprise to me, but if that's what you're attempting to do, I think that's the correct thing. And so Carol has a problem. A couple years ago, we had a problem with a county manager, and it led up to her termination. Right? But we worked it that process. So I think if that's what you're attempting to do, if you already have a point of contact to work with, and the point of contact is saying, no, I'm too busy, blah, 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 bring it to their boss, and then up the chain you go.
Okay, so nonetheless, it is correct for Director D'Angelo to point out that in the past, that normally the process, and I believe that's already spelled out somewhere, is if you want to initiate a conversation with the GM, you go through the president. I suppose the clarification that I'm hearing it is if you already have an existing chain, a communication line with staff, you don't need to go to the president.
First, yeah.
Go work it. All right, or any action of its personnel. Okay, so this is what I would propose. After the word personnel,
What line?
Second line in the last
last
paragraph.
paragraph, I would suggest making a reference back up to the first president, or the first paragraph, excuse me, regarding a prior approval.
You'll have to help me with that, because I can't figure out how to write that.
Well, it's very simple.
Okay, good.
Any of its personnel, and insert regarding a prior approval, comma. So that it's making sure this is limited to those circumstances where you already have a pre-existing relationship with staff. If you're initiating a new communication, then yeah, it goes back to the normal, you go to the board president first.
So are you going to put that component in there?
I'm getting ready to
Okay.
move that. I move to insert that phrase after the word personnel and before the comma in the second line of the last paragraph. Is that seconded?
Second, oh yeah, sorry.
David is shaking his head, so David seconds?
Right.
Okay, do we need any further discussion?
No.
Okay, can we adopt this by acclamation?
No,
Please.
No?
I oppose.
Okay, very good. So, vote has been called for. All in favor, please indicate. I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Gail is opposed. So that motion does pass. So now we have a new reworded motion. Is there any further discussion on the underlying motion?
Mr. President, Leslie.
I just wanted to note the fact that we recently have looked at the general manager's contract, and this does bring things in line with that, where it states that there are certain committee chairs who have a relationship with specific staff members, and that's simply what this is saying, that I support this motion.
Mr. President, Gail.
Yeah, Gail.
And I feel the opposite. A lot of this policy that we're looking at has to do with the existing contract with our existing manager, which does give the role of interfacing to the of the board. But technically, the general manager actually reports to the entire board. We have in our contract given our president that role of being the contact person. So I oppose it. I think it's not needed, to be honest.
Mr. President, we have Eric and then Linda.
Okay, Eric.
I would support this policy because it is in line with processes that we already follow, but now this puts it in words, a process that we are informally seeming to follow right now. The fact that the general manager reports to the board, that's true, reports to the board as a whole, and the representative of the board as a whole is its executive. And so that is, to me, repeated in the contract with the general manager. But it's certainly not something that we need to even bring into the discussion for this policy. This policy is about how we as individual directors and committee heads would interact with staff. So I support this.
Mr. President, Linda.
I have to agree. I see the whole board, what's in the bylaw sort of, where it isn't like each one of us can go into the office and direct Mitch or any of the staff to do things in a particular way. If we decide we wanna see something done, it should be, the decision should be as a board, and you give the board president direction as to, this is the way we'd like to see things done now, and then he and Mitch work things out. I see this more as an operational sort of a function. You know, Lisa and Mitch and I have just recently gone through the ballot box thing that was a change. You know, I got permission from the board, we've talked about it, it's working, but I'm saying, I see this as something going back to Mitch where this is operational. If I'm not happy with how they're doing something, I would go talk to Lisa first, and then I would ask her to make an appointment with Mitch, and then that's where we would deal with it, and then it would come back around if I wasn't satisfied. And so that's kind of how I see it. I just see it much different than us directing him. This is more of an operational, functional thing that I see. That's where I'm at with that.
Mr. President, David?
I was just gonna basically say the same thing as was found out. The policy generally, isn't that an operational guidance? Which was day-to-day kinds of things, which this is how they actually function. And it makes sense that we all at least have an agreement on how, but that's the nature of that rather than a legal, yes, how legally binding, but this gets us through the day.
Mr. President, call the question.
Question's been called, and without objection, all in favor of the motion as amended, please indicate. Have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? Gail? Okay, so this motion does pass.
Closed session for legal matters will take care of.
That has been taken care of.
I have a new business request. I have a new business request, it's 30 seconds. It was something that we received, last Friday night, we received some amended requests for covenants on the loan, right? And so we already had approval of the board minutes where the loan, the board had voted and approved the loan. But now we have changed it again, right? So what I need are the meeting minutes from today, prepared tomorrow, and approved. And since we don't have time to call a board meeting, I'd like the meeting minutes prepared tomorrow for this meeting and then approved by the execs. I have to put them in the loan package.
Okay, so you're asking that the execs tomorrow approve the draft minutes.
That's correct.
Meeting minutes.
I will write as fast as I can and send it out to everybody.
How do we need
It's
to
a lo-
provide that approval? Do we need to meet? Do we need to sign them? Do
The
we-
executive committee, I think we will do a simple email thing. I mean, it's just the three. It's just the three of us. We don't need to meet physically.
Well, I'm just wondering because I do have things in the morning. I could be available in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I'd rather get this done as soon as possible.
I'm agreeing because I think they are going to need it as soon as possible.
And
Yeah.
you know, as the bylaws say, if you can't have a physical meeting,
Emails okay.
email will have
We
to
already,
do.
we already had the approval, but now it's been approved
Yeah.
again, so I need this,
Got it.
these minutes.
Do we need to motion for that, or is it simply?
I think by acclamation,
Yeah, good.
the board gives its approval for the executive committee to do that and act that way. It will still require ratification later, but you have prior approval.
Okay. Ratification, just everyone remembers, the ratification in an executive session, the board is complicit, they must approve.
Does it create a problem with regard to ratification of the new board?
The rules of an executive session, and if the executives approve something in executive session, the board must approve.
Okay, so even if a new board decided they want
The new board must approve it. If failing to approve it would result in some sort of legal liability. And in this case, because it's a loan package, yeah, it might result in liability.
Okay, well, we have another meeting to ratify what you guys did before the AGM.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
144, thank you.
What?